Hello, I'm back. Truth be told, oops, my webcam. Truth be told, I don't know what changed, or if anything changed at all between last time and this time. But for some reason, my microphone is behaving a lot better than last time. In fact, I will have to increase it by maybe two. Two sounds about right. Yeah, there we go. I've increased my mic levels a little bit. Ready to go. I have a little bit of food coma, I'll be real. I'm also just really tired. At the end of this week in particular. I don't know. Let's get on some custom track worldwide to see what's going on. Uh-oh. What's happening? Art. Okay, good. I don't know why that happened. For some reason, my count up timer didn't feel like starting. Anywho. Oh man. I wonder if I'll have the energy to talk about the stuff that I've written down on that list. There's quite a bit. There's quite a bit of stuff. Let's start nice and slow. And by nice and slow, I mean with the death of two major industrialized countries. I saw this in a Twitter post a little while ago, and of course I looked it up to verify because Twitter is a cesspool of disinformation and bullshit. And apparently it was the truth that both the UK and Japan are now they're in a recession, economic recession. You go with Reuters here first. Japan unexpectedly slips into recession. Germany now world's third biggest economy. So that's something, right? Certainly of note. Like one of the key critiques of market system or of capitalism in general to keep in mind is that when line goes up, that's not always good. But when line goes down, that is always bad. Right? So like in terms of GDP growth and economic growth in a country, economic growth existing isn't necessarily a good thing because of the problems that happen with regards to like wealth distribution and concentration of wealth and whatever. But on the other side of things, when wealth when GDP decreases, that is bad. Because in like in a capitalist system, it's always going to be the case that to some degree, wealth is going to be concentrated at the top. So while in a growing economy, that would mean that technically everybody's gaining wealth, even if the gap is widening. If an economy is shrinking, that just means that wealth is being exponentially siphoned from the bottom and being transferred to the top. Because the people who are hurt in economic recessions are never the wealthy. Like the owning class, they don't get hurt during an economic recession because that is they're sort of their interests are international. It's not like confined to one country's economy. But people who have to work for a living, the working class, their interests are oftentimes confined to a regional or national block. So they do get affected by economic shrinkage, I guess. Recession and things like that. Spectating Sun Tzu here. It's lagging a little bit. He showed up over Antarctica. I don't know if that's where he actually is. Kind of wild if it was. Congrats, my dude. You got third. So now that I've explained the sort of the principal thought to have about GDP, or at least how I think of it, uh, let's see some of the details, some of the particulars of Japan's case. Japan's GDP fell by 0.4% after a 3.3% slump in the previous quarter. So, oh wow. Two consecutive quarters of economic contraction are typically considered the definition of a technical recession. So it hasn't been going on for very long. Japan's economy has only been shrinking for about half a year, but that's still significant. Because it means that, like, economic stagnation is happening. This goes into some of the financial, like, market oriented and, you know, stock exchange kind of details about the Japanese economy stagnating and shrinking, basically just being like, oh, well, you see the market indexes say blah 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 blah, and the currency exchange rate is this, and there's like I don't know, there's less consumption, there's more inflation, but there are more important root causes to be focused on. All of what they list would just be the symptoms of that economic decline rather than the driving force behind it, right? In Japan, there was a spurt of economic growth in the 1980s. It was like a lot of people were saying, "Oh, Japan's going to be like the next big thing," right? But that didn't end up happening. It kind of capped off at around the 1990s, and Japan has since, politically speaking, been trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle, right? Because it really kind of was a flash in the pan moment. So what ended up happening is, you know, I guess the economic conditions really intensified, for lack of a better word. Japan is known for having a very toxic work culture and for very antisocial economic conditions in it. You know, obviously there's the stereotype of the Japanese shut-in and whatever. The circumstances on the ground there really aren't good, because there are toxic work norms around being at work for a very long time, doing a lot of extra stuff, a lot of crunch time. You know, 60-hour or more work weeks over there are a pretty regular occurrence, and unionization is pretty socially discouraged in the workplace and whatever by like management and whatever. They don't have a very strong labor movement at the moment. It's been going through a recession of its own, and as a result of that, that has enabled you know, the bosses, the managers, the CEOs to impose more and more stringent conditions on Japanese workers. And because of that, people's lives get more and more consumed by work. They don't have the time or the money to go out and do things with friends, you know, go out for a drink and whatever, like go out and, you know, spend a weekend. And that is economic activity. The economic activity that is decreasing is doing so because people don't have the time or money to do it. And that is because of deteriorating working conditions and draconian economic norms in the workplace. So basically, capitalism is the reason for Japan's economic decline. Is that, you know, the proletariat, the working class, is in such a dire strait that they can't go out and do stuff. It is incredibly difficult for people in Japan to even find jobs in the first place. So you're getting a lot of this really, really bad economic slowdown, and that's going to make the problem even worse. Now let's take a look at the United Kingdom, see if AP has anything different to say, different than what we already saw with Japan. Let's see, from London, the British economy fell into recession at the end of 2023 for the first time since the onset of COVID. Output shrank more than anticipated in the final 3 months of the year. They blow to the governing Conservative Party. All three main sectors, services, industrial production, and construction, were down in terms of activity. let's see, more details on it. There had been a couple of quarters of stagnation or mild shrinkage in the economy previous. Yeah, and the Conservative Party, it seems, according to this article, is sort of doubling down on their austerity policies of cutting taxes and sort of stretching financial public services to their limit by, defunding them further or privatizing them and whatever. So actually kind of a similar story to Japan. Obviously, Japan, having been ruled by conservatives for a long time, it is also very steeped in the austerity politics and whatnot. But the United Kingdom was really the initial testing grounds for that set of policies and had truly disastrous consequences for the country. There's a reason that the economic recession in the 1980s in the United Kingdom was as bad as it was, and that is because austerity politics fucking sucks. The fixation on austerity politics, like I mentioned with Japan, with those like toxic workplace norms and whatever, austerity politics has a way of depriving the working class of much needed income, wealth, and time that they need to be able to go out and do the things that they want to do. When people in the working classes have less and less wealth, they're less able to be the economic activity that a country needs. And as a result, you get recessions like this. British business owners are not really suffering from this. They don't care that much. Because business owners everywhere don't care that much about a recession. It just means that their favorite playgrounds of speculative investment are a little bit less populated. But yeah, anti-worker policymaking and austerity politics bleeds countries dry. Not just in terms of economic growth, but in terms of economic, everything basically. Because public services are what makes a country tick. When people have that bottom line of welfare security and whatever, they are a lot more able to have money to spend when they want to or need to or whatever it is. And them spending that money is the economic activity. I think I've repeated myself enough times here. That's basically the situation, what's going on in Britain and Japan. Sorry, Funky. Kind of feel bad for wheelie bumping that guy, but it was an accident. So. And it also doesn't help in the case of the United Kingdom. It also doesn't help that the only other major party in government, the UK kind of has a two-party system, a little bit like the United States. It's not quite the same. It's a bit more convoluted than that, but the two biggest parties in the UK are the Conservatives and the Labour Party. The Labour Party is basically just another Conservative party at this point. Because of Keir Starmer and his leadership of the Labour Party, they are worse than Blairites, even. Blairites I would at least expect to be about the same or maybe a little bit to the right of American Democrats on how they manage an economy and things like that. Meanwhile, Keir Starmer's Labour has literally abandoned Labour politics. They've said that they are actually the pro-business party. So now there is no representation for the worker in the United Kingdom, except for maybe the Green Party. But not enough time has passed to really see how that would play out. Green Party's still a pretty minor party in Britain. So you have this recession brought on by really shitty Tory policymaking, cutting taxes, enabling corporations to impose more stringent conditions and skirt more regulations that end up hurting people, paying people less and whatever. And you have the Labour Party, which has professed on multiple occasions not to fix those problems. You know, and I guess to bring it all back, that both the UK and Japan are experiencing this. That is what causes an economic recession of this kind, like when there are very, very bad working conditions, when the working class is in a really bad spot. That's how you get recessions like this. Because then, like, when people, when working and middle class, which, I mean, middle class people are also working class, but when the lower socioeconomic classes of society don't have that little bit of extra room to move around and spend money and go out and do stuff with their friends and whatever, that is what kills economies. Because, like, people who are wealthy, right, you know, the owning class, they're always going to have that money in a capitalist system. That's just how being part of the owning class works. And also, they have so much money that even if they wanted to actually spend money and to drive economic activity, first of all, they wouldn't be doing it on a national scale, but rather on an international scale, because that's how, you know, being a sort of business tycoon works. But then also, they literally wouldn't be able to, because they have too much money for any one person, or even, like, for a proportional group of people of that size to spend. Hopefully that makes sense. I hope I'm not, like, just puffing hot air here. Oh, shit. Ow. Have a banana. Classic. Ah! That's a good spot to use the shock, I think. If you're that guy. Oh, that was a good pow. How did I not get the, like... I don't know how that worked. I'm livid. Pretty good. Pretty good race. Also, I think a lot of these guys are the guys I'm talking about when I say, like, there are 6,000, 7,000 VR players that race like nobody's business. Yeah, look at this. I'm in a room full of 6,000, 7,000 VR players, and there's just a couple people with 9,000. And this is some competitive-ass racing. Don't let the VR fool you in any Mario Kart room that you're in. Might be Jover for Britain. And it's been Jover for Japan. I mentioned that, like, their heyday was in the 1980s. They haven't experienced that you know, really robust economic growth in some time. You know what would fix this? Unironically, unions. Obviously, as a socialist, I have some critiques of trade unionism as it, like, runs up against the barriers of capitalism versus socialism, blah blah. But ultimately, when workers have an outlet to express their own class interests and to assert it in certain situations, then that actually enables economies to survive a lot better and be a lot more resilient, and for people's lives in general to be a lot better, because then everybody wouldn't be living in destitute poverty, except for, like, the hyper wealthy elite that own all the companies. You know, literally every study that exists on unionization says that, like, yeah, unions just make things better. Oh, jeez, I didn't mean to hit that guy. I was trying to go inside. bro. Sun Tzu. Wild brand. You know, I actually have read Sun Tzu's The Art of War, and I would definitely recommend it. You know, it's not very long of a read. It is classical literature, but it's pretty short. Ooh, I can't believe I dodged that. All right. Am I gonna win this track? This insane track? Time will tell. And it looks like I am. Cool. Very nice indeed. Okay. That was pretty funny. It still played the "You Got Shrunk" kind of music when I'd crossed the finish line and the shock happened. Anywho, thank your lucky stars if you're not British, Japanese, or German, as I explained in the last stream. Germany's experiencing problems of a very, very different sort. Yeah. But speaking of organized labor, I actually have some good news to deliver to that effect. A lot of Twitter related stuff on this list, mostly news that I just saw through Twitter. Not to say like Twitter drama or anything. But for More Perfect Union, they do a lot of stuff on Twitter and on YouTube. So I see a lot of it. Today, Michigan is officially no longer a right-to-work state. Now, of course, this is effective as of a few days ago, so as of February 13th. Michigan is no longer a right-to-work state. Michigan is the first state in nearly 60 years to ditch the union-busting laws known as right-to-work laws. Public school workers can now collectively bargain. It's easier for unions to build power, and billionaires are really mad about it. And that's great. You know, right to work, so-called right to work policies and laws in the United States have had a devastating impact on unionization and the standing of workers in the United States ever since those laws were first concocted in Satan's laboratory. You see. For anybody wondering about the specifics, what a right to work law does, essentially it says that, like, if there's a union in your workplace, only the members have to pay dues. Either that or, like, paying dues is optional even if you are a member. I think that's it, actually. If you have a union in your workplace and you're in a right to work state, paying dues is optional. And I think the union contracts would, like, only apply to union members. It wouldn't apply to everybody. It's basically, it's an effort to sort of fracture the power that unions are able to get when they're organizing in the workplace. You know, sabotaging their financial base so that they're less able to represent workers. And Michigan decided, you know what, fuck you, workers' rights, and they decided to repeal that law in the legislature there. Unfortunately, my state, Virginia, is still a right-to-work state. So, you know, we can't all get what we want. But the fact that this is a new trend, that a lot of states are repealing these draconian laws, is a good thing, I think. Genuine victory for unionization. Because that's freedom of association, baby. Oh yeah, and also another law that's frequently part of the right to work package is the at will employment stuff, which means that you can be fired for any reason at any time or for no reason at all, which means that it is legal for employers to retaliate against people if they decide to form a union. They can effectively put a chilling effect on unionization, not only with the other right to work stuff like making it harder for unions to get money from dues and therefore harder to bargain to pay back those dues, but they can also sort of sniff out, oh, this person is getting uppity and wants to unionize or whatever, and, you know, fire them, basically. And stuff like that. Which is really cringe. Because it's, well, I've explained why. Makes people's lives worse, and that's bad. This track is pretty wacky. Somehow in first, though. Ooh, pow dodge? Yay. Huh. That was a pretty uneventful race. Kind of drove in first for the whole time. See how many people the next race has in this room. I'll stay. Kind of waiting for 1v3 to show up in chat, I'll be real, because they recommended to me, one of my chatters recommended to me a Dutch talk show episode, and I watched it about Biden being old and senile and stuff, and I had some thoughts on it. So I thought it was worth commenting on. I didn't agree with everything that was said, and I also sometimes had a hard time understanding it because it was in Dutch, and I was relying on the auto-generated translated captions. You know. But in the meantime, what else? Get that one out. Lava Lake, I see. Is this what I think it is? If it, I'm thinking of a certain track. Yes, it's this one. No, mirror mode? I'm fucked. There is, by the way, there's also a video that I wanted to watch, also by More Perfect Union, but that's a little bit longer of a commitment, you know, like doing React stuff. So I don't know if I want to do that this stream, or maybe I'll do that like next stream or something. Aha, shortcut. Yo, what up, Sun Tzu? Your book is fire, by the way. The Sun Tzu, The Art of War, I could actually talk a little bit about that right now. Like I said, really not a long long book, and not a difficult read either. But it's got some interesting stuff to say about it's like the theory of warfare, right? You know, like all warfare is based on deception or whatever. Like Sun Tzu in the Art of War acknowledges that like warfare by nature is bad. So as a military commander, you want the war to be as short as possible, because then like the longer the war drags on, the less the victory will be like actually impactful and help you realize your goal. Because, you know, a lot of times war is fought over land and material, and, you know, warfare tends to ravage that land and material, and of course the people living there and using that material as well, which is not something you want. If you're not evil, you don't want that. But, you know, this is an assumption that me and Sun Tzu both are making and sort of engaging with these ideas. Oh, no. Okay. No! Rip. Ah, good shit, James. I would have been mad at that fib if I didn't, like, just immediately cross the line afterwards, but, you know, it's all in good fun. He does actually talk a lot about, Sun Tzu talks a lot about supply and logistics in warfare. You know, a lot of what he talks about isn't necessarily battlefield tactics. He does mention those, but he says, like, you know, that's ultimately, like, in some ways that's less important than the logistics and stuff that goes on behind the scenes, the administrative side of warfare. Because if your war effort is better coordinated, you'll win even if your troops aren't as, like, well trained or something like that. Yeah. I'd kind of have a hard time recalling a whole lot of the stuff that was talked about there, because some of it is so basic I wouldn't really know how to explain it in a way that didn't sound like dumb and self-evident. And some of the stuff I also just don't remember because it's been a while since I read it, but it was pretty good, and I would recommend it. Although the people who, like, frequently brag about having read The Art of War online and who will say, like, this is essential to understanding like the world and whatever the fuck, the people who get, like, really up their own ass about it have no idea what they're talking about and probably have never read it, or at least did not understand it at all, you know. Ah. Ah. Oh, that was his pal? Oh, wow. Interesting. Fib wall. Somebody's gonna hit one of those. Yeah, somebody hit one. Poor bastard. Oh, dude, Tony Pizza. I know that guy. I'm holding this out. I hear somebody behind me. I tried. Really? Huh. Let's see. Ah, that red shell can't make that jump. This is an older custom track. Aw, dude. That sucks if you're that guy. That was mean. I was gonna shoot those green shells at him at the line so I could potentially get second. But I guess Tony Pizza just threw one backwards. That ultimately that's why I didn't throw them. I didn't wanna be that guy. Not in that moment anyways. What else we got? Let's I'm gonna close out this More Perfect Union thing here. Random, like I do all the time. Yeah. Let's talk about policing. You guys might know my leanings, or might be able to guess my leanings on what I think of police. But you'll find out soon enough either way. Recently I talked about there was like a police shooting where the only person involved in a shooting was the police. There was nobody else there to even be shot. Because they heard an acorn fall on the squad car, and they were like, "Oh, that's a and they mistook that for a gunshot, and then yelled, 'I'm hit,' and like unloaded the clip into the squad car." It was funny if it didn't, like, aside from the very sobering implications, like, man, protect and serve. These guys are trying to be so fucking jumpy and, like, pull their gun at the literal first sign of trouble ever. I'm dead. Yeah. But I found a thread of a former cop that actually explains a lot of that behavior, explains why cops are like that. Because all cops, to some degree, are like this. Um, we'll find out how and why in a moment. What's wrong with you? Right? I'm gonna use this mega around the corner here. It's good usage, I think. Okay, I got disconnected, I guess. Yeah, alright. Don't know why that happened. Well, this is as good a time as any to start on that thing. Or is it? Ah, yes. Uh, Twitter thread from a former cop. Let's see. Tracks worldwide. Let's just go on in. All right. I've been taught to yell, "Stop resisting," and "Drop your weapon" after firing a gun, because bystanders will remember you said it, and their memory will automatically reverse the order of events to make this make sense. Their testimony will support yours because of this. I've been told to, quote, "loosen up and have fun. Why are you so serious?" Unquote. What? Why so serious? When doing a shoot/don't shoot scenario training. This is during police training. This is a little inside window into how America trains police officers. I've been told that de-escalation techniques will get me and other officers killed, and as a smaller law enforcement officer, I was justified escalating my use of force faster than my colleagues because I was always in danger, so I should use it. I've been told my only job is to go home at night. Most cops are told this. I heard arguments to this effect as far back as in high school, before the BLM movement even really took off. When it was still this fringe position. That I was pro BLM, by the way. Thank you. And I was having like lunch table debates with some of my friends who were more conservative. And they would say, you know, as a police officer, your only job is to go home at night. And I was like, you don't think that's like bad? Anyways, just to establish that like these are norms that have been in place in the police departments for a very long time. I've been told all of these things in formal, controlled, and regulated police academies. And let's see. I've gone through 3. I've heard some of these things more than once. When I questioned these things in my 3rd academy and stated that they were inconsistent with the ethics of policing, I was kicked out of the academy on my last day. I had completed and excelled at all of the graded tasks, but was told, "You aren't what we want in our force." This is what I mean when I say, like, when I bring up ACAB and whatever and say that cops pre-select, like police departments pre-select for the kind of cops that are bastards. This is what I mean. That they, like, if you show an like signs of an inviolable ethical compass or whatever, an unwillingness to just shoot on sight, they will sometimes literally kick you out of the police force. And at the very least, those attitudes are discouraged consistently. This person goes on. She says, "I loved my job. I gave a lot to do it for 5 years. In that time, I never broke leather on my holster. I never fired my taser. I put my hands on an individual twice, both times a simple arm bar hold that immediately caused both individuals to comply. Neither individual was hurt." And I think that's good. That nobody was hurt there. "I've been in many sticky situations in that time, faced several armed individuals. I worked in a national park, yes, but in a high crime area. Being a park ranger means working alone most of the time. I could not afford to escalate a situation, and I didn't." That's not the full thread, there's more, but I'm racing here, so I can't really read it right now. It's leisurely 1v1, I guess. Nice music, too. This track is actually really cool, and in some parts it actually feels like it could be a hypothetical Mario Kart track that like Nintendo designed, which I think is cool. It definitely is. It's very versatile in the kind of vehicles that you can get away with using on it. Let's see. However, landed on the boost. So, lucky me, I guess. If he gets another blue shell, though, he'd probably take over first. Not going to do anything too risky here, just sort of driving along. I'll throw back this green shell right here so I can get another item at the very least. Now that could be a problem, potentially. Unless I get something here. Okay. Problem pretty much solved. Good stuff. I'll look for it. So, back to this lady who was a police officer and explaining some of the problems in policing. In 4 words, a police academy commander ended my career. You don't belong here. After 16 years of federal service without a single complaint or write-up, I lost any chance of working the final 4 years I needed for retirement. Which is gotta be just crushing. With student loan debt, living in a new city, with a teenager, I lost my job, my insurance, and the ability to use the education and experience I had worked so hard to achieve. I don't regret it. Nor should they, I think. Because ultimately the decision was, do you become, like, a killer for, I don't fucking know, whichever police department is currently employing you, or do you walk away economically worse off, but, like, not having killed anybody? I still believe in resource protection. It matters, but I no longer believe the system of policing we have is the way to achieve it. During my campaign for the HOD, I don't know what that stands for, I got lambasted by my Republican opponent for saying, I know cops, I've worked with them, trained with them, and some of them are friends, some of them are not, and some of them are murderers. I know it's not politically expedient, but some of them are murderers. That is, that's actually a pretty startling admission to make. This is a Republican politician, or rather Republican, like, hopeful for a certain seat in like a local political position, saying that, yeah, some cops are murderers. And just saying that in a kind of hand-wavy fashion. HOD acronym? Oh, head of the department. Okay. Maybe? Or maybe not. Head of department. And that's what I'm seeing consistent. Yeah. So I've explained before that the most direct responsibility of police departments is to protect private property, not human life. And now there are a number of ex-cops out there that could give similar testimonies, but this woman was one such person who explained that police departments are looking specifically for people who are willing to kill basically on a hair trigger, or who are willing to put up with the training that would then instill in them the tendency and the instinct to kill on a hair trigger. It's really bad. And whenever you are thinking about what could make somebody say, abolish the police, defund the police, all cops are bastards, stuff like that, stuff that is categorically a condemnation of the police force. Think of stuff like this, that there are flaws so inherent to the institutions of policing in this country and so severe that, like, you can't have that. Like, you can either have a safe community or you can have American policing. You can't have both. And that's just the ways that cops kill people directly. That doesn't say anything necessarily about the ways in which cops can ruin your life without ever necessarily laying a finger on you directly, Even if you're falsely arrested for something, your life is over. Because in the United States, once you're in prison, you lose all of your potential job prospects. Being a bit cheeky there. I don't mind it because they did it to more people and they stopped and, spun around for a bit. Ultimately, I think that was pretty funny. Oh, that's a shortcut? I didn't know that. Ah, I see you can go this way. Ow. Jeez, dude. I need an item. That's not bad. I'll take it. How do you get up there? I wonder. What? How did that happen? Huh? I'm gonna get last, I think? Yeah. Room. Still 5 players, which is a decent enough sized room. Anything smaller than 5 players and it feels a little bit, like, uneventful. But 5 players and up is a good room size for this. So yeah, obligatory fuck the police moment. I will not tolerate any rhetorical defense of American policing. And obviously I do believe, even as an anarchist, that peacekeeping is a function that needs to be performed in society. Is this a police force that I'm talking about? No. But theoretically, you do have to have some method of managing antisocial behaviors and to prevent people from hurting one another. Preferably, this would look more like some sort of community action or intervention rather than actual proper professional policing, Because these are skills that really everybody should have and should be able to exercise. That, everybody should have a vested interest in the community in which they live and should be able to engage with their neighbors in a de-escalatory fashion. But, what I'm saying that to preface is that if the option were between the American police system or the absence of that police system, it just, like, not even necessarily replacing it with anything, but they're just, you got rid of the police, the data supports that you would be safer if there were no police. Legit. Because police do not fight crime. That's not why they exist. And that's not what they spend most of their time doing anyways. They've never solved a bare majority of crimes. They don't have that even as a priority in some instances. They're, you know, their main priority is to, well, secure budget increases because, you know, political objectives and whatnot. But then also, most of what they do is just try to make monthly ticket quotas and stuff, you know, harassing drivers on the road. So in the hierarchy or like the order of operations here that I'm describing of preferential situations, like what's the most preferable? The most preferable scenario is like, you know, anarchist utopia, no class, no state, no money, etc., etc. But you do have this envisionment, like this theoretical envisionment of a social peacekeeping standard by which you can do community policing and interventions and stuff that ideally like never even involves drawing a gun on somebody. You know? And then below that would be you don't have that, but you also don't have the police system, right? And then option number 3 is you have the American police system. That's like from best to worst. And then somewhere in there would be a police system that is still flawed, but better than what we have. You know? I got first then. He had just enough time to say woo, and then he got hit again. Okay. 6 players? I'll stay in for that. Mushroom Valley. I know what this one. Well, if I'm remembering right, there was a much older No, wait, this is what I think it is. Okay, never mind. I was thinking of Mushroom Island and confusing it with this track. Got him. Silly man. I'm dead. Served me right, I guess. For going for him the one time. Oh, come on! Red shells. Yeah, I'll get rid of these. Probably gave him a good sweat there, then didn't really mean to, but you know. Okay. Aha! Now they don't have items. Yeah. Yeah. Oh wait, I feel like you would be able to take those mushrooms over there and just finish the race. Huh. Okay. 6 players. I'll stick with it. Oh yeah, this is another thing I saw recently. New development in the Israel-Palestine, or the Israeli genocide of Palestine. Uh, Things are getting more insane over there, like progressively so. It's from somebody I follow. This is well, he's talking about a news article from the Intercept. I'll just read the headline. IDF sent in handcuffed prisoner to evacuate hospital, then killed him when he left. The young man, bound by zip tie cuffs, delivered his Israeli captor's message, but was shot as he tried to walk out of the hospital gate. Man, if this ain't the fucking story of the whole ordeal over there. Currently, what's going on, this is just one example of the various things happening across the Gaza Strip. Israel occupies most of the Gaza Strip, I think, except for Rafah, the absolute southernmost city in Gaza, which itself is not even the size of like Chicago. The entire Gaza Strip isn't even the size of Chicago, and it has several cities inside of it. It's like the most densely populated region on Earth, or something like that. And there are 1.4-ish million Gazans in Rafah, taking refuge there, as insofar as they can. And Israel's been sort of mounting an offensive to that effect. How am I in first again? And now there are issues of mass famine starting to arise in Rafah. 80%, I think, according to UN statistics, 80% of everybody in the world who is in a famine situation right now is in Palestine. So if you took out Palestine, like if you remove that number from the statistics that you're dealing with, that's 4/5 of the whole like population of like famished people, which is wild. Yeah. And what I wanted to talk about here is that, like, some folks I feel like could come away with the impression of, like, how is this a genocide, right? Right now, the death toll stands at about 29,000 in Gaza, officially. That doesn't count the bodies that they haven't found yet, of course, but, you know, certainly 30,000 is bad, but out of 2-point-something million, 2.1 million, I believe, was the population of Gaza before the Israeli invasion started. You know, I don't know. People might think that, like, that doesn't exactly qualify as genocide numbers. And that's because this isn't, like, this isn't quite the stage of genocide where the casualty numbers would start to explode yet. We're approaching that now, but like the kind of genocide that Israel is conducting in Palestine, in the Gaza Strip, also in the West Bank, but that's a little bit different. Particularly in the Gaza Strip, what Israel is doing is they're inflicting conditions of life on people to make it literally unlivable. They're not shooting them directly unless they come across them, in which case sometimes they do shoot them directly. But instead what they're doing is they are containing people in Gaza and then making it so that you can't leave Gaza, but also it is impossible to survive in Gaza. So people will gradually start to die. Now, the human body can survive weeks, even months without food, but only days without water. People in Gaza have some limited access to potable water, dirty water, whatever. They have water insofar as it can sustain them as a matter of like survival and last resort, right? They don't have food. So now there's a ticking clock because Israel has also been preventing a lot of food aid from entering Gaza. There's a ticking clock counting down to when the starvation deaths begin to happen. And that is when the casualties will explode into something much more characteristic of a genocide. Um, you know, like I said, 80% of the world's famished population is in Gaza. That is the majority of the world hunger crisis right now. And, at this point, it's almost like Israel should be considered a force of nature. Nothing could convince them to stop, aside from that which could forcibly put an end to them doing so. It's like if you have a fire, you can't bargain with the fire to stop burning. You have to throw buckets of water on it to put it out. To snuff it, essentially. And right now, Israel is acting the part of a fire that's going to burn Gaza to the ground. They've already burned Gaza to the ground for the most part. Most of Gaza has been leveled by bombing campaigns by the IDF. Hello, Flat Earth Dennis 69. Welcome back to chat. Just talking about the latest stage of the latest development from Palestine, and how that if you just look at raw casualty numbers, it might not look like a genocide, but once the starvation deaths start to roll in, it will become very evident. You hear about Navalny? Yes, I did actually. God, that's something I forgot. When I was doing stream, I should have mentioned that at some point. But thank you for bringing it up. Yeah. Yeah. I think Alexei Navalny was like a liberal Democrat, or even in some ways nationalist, but, small d Democrat, like, believes in democracy, opponent to Vladimir Putin. Bro died on our Independence Day. Well, that's kind of an unfortunate coincidence. I think his death doesn't really tell us anything we didn't already know, but it does sort of confirm something that everybody more or less suspected, which is that Russian politics are pretty cooked. Russia didn't really have a chance to be a vibrant democracy in any form ever since the Western approach of economic shock therapy or whatever. That kind of annihilated any chance Russia had of being a democracy, it motivated people to recede into that which was comfortable, which is to say, like, strongman authoritarianism and like comforting assurances of nationalistic power and stuff. And now Alexei Navalny was kind of like the last vestige of the hope for a liberal democratic Russia, and now he's gone. So I feel like, But it is unfortunate, of course. My man's had a family. You know, they will miss him, and a lot of people will miss him. Hopefully, like I know that this runs counter to what I just said. Hopefully, that could potentially, you know, galvanize people to want democracy maybe a little more in Russia. That like, hey, you know, killing your political opponents is bad. Actually, maybe you shouldn't do that. Um, but yeah, ultimately, I don't think this is all that different from Putin having done this to a lot of other political opponents of his. Uh, you know, it'll come and go, stuff like that. We elected former Soviet leaders right after shock therapy, and they did pretty well. Yeah, that's not super surprising. It's not very surprising to me because the shock therapy was like a dismantling of all the public services and nationalized industry that most of the Soviet officials did. It was one of the few one of the few things that happened in some of the Soviet bloc states that you could perceive as like a pretty favorable change, is a nationalization of a lot of essential industries and like very strong public services and stuff, despite them not having all that much money to do it with. Uh, Rosauskas was a pretty good president, yeah. Yeah, but you know what I'm getting at basically is it probably seemed pretty appealing to people. Like, hey, these guys are all about like the public services and making sure that there's a big social safety net and stuff, even if that's just social democracy, not really socialism or whatever. But you know that's preferable to what the shock therapy offered a lot of people. Secretary of the Lithuanian SSR. Yeah. That's kind of funny. It's kind of like if Gorbachev got elected as the president of Russia after the Soviet Union was dissolved. And you know what's funny? I feel like if Gorbachev was elected the president of Russia, things would have turned out a lot better. You know, Gorbachev, from what little I have read about him, Gorbachev was a proper social democrat. You know, in some circles, you might derogatorily refer to him as a liberal, but you know, definitely better than Yeltsin, right? Like Yeltsin was just basically willing to do whatever his American advisors advised him to do, all the while he probably had a vodka bottle in his hand. But you know, Gorbachev was more interested in the actual like the mission of social democracy. You know, he actually split the Lithuanian Communist Party from the USSR Communist Party in an attempt for autonomy. That's really interesting. Also, I think that's a pretty smart move. You know, not like Lithuania was treated especially well at all times in the history of Russia, like occupying the area. Still fuck Gorbachev. He's an asshole dictator. Well, yeah, he was the general secretary of the USSR. But he would have been better than Yeltsin. You know, it's not a high bar to clear. Not a particularly high bar to clear. You know, I think it just goes to show that like Russia and some other component parts of the Eastern Bloc truly got the worst possible timeline after the fall of the Soviet Union. Imagine being so evil you banned Christmas, Lamau. Did he do that? That's pretty cringe if he did that. I'm not a huge fan of Christmas, but like banning Christmas is fucking stupid. No, that was Stalin. That wasn't Gorbachev. You liar. You silly. You tried to get me. That was Stalin that banned Christmas. Yeah. Anyway, what were we talking about initially? Oh yeah, Navalny. I don't know if there's that much that I can say about Navalny's death because I don't know that much about like the pro-democracy movement in Russia or like the pro-unionization movement and stuff like that. You know, I think I mentioned this before that I haven't read a whole lot about Russian politics in particular. Might be one of my blind spots. I could read about that in the future. I'm not going to throw this back at you. That would be mean. I'll throw it back, but not at you particularly. He died from sudden death disease, apparently. Yeah, that's true. He fell down the stairs despite living in a one-story flat. Here, hold on. Alexei Navalny and pro-democracy in Russia. Let's see that. Russia's democracy movement will survive the death of Navalny. That sounds like an opinion piece headline, so I'm not going to pay that too much mind. Sudden death syndrome. The government told his mother this. That is such a big fuck you, dude. Oh my god. I cannot imagine how angry the mom must be right now. Like, the government's like, yes, your son Alexei Navalny, he died of sudden death syndrome. Very common in high-profile political movement. And she's looking at them like, damn, they expect me to believe this shit? Let's see if I can't get a reliable news source about this. Which means not the Wall Street Journal and not, like, fucking Radio Free Europe or something. Biggest political foe. I assume this is just because he's popular. Let's see. Let me maybe just search for the pro-democracy movement in Russia, because I think I know basically the essential bits about Navalny, which is that he's pro-democracy, anti-Putin, and did a lot of activism in Russia, and ultimately, like, that's what got him killed. But I don't know a whole lot about the movement that he did work with, you know? I think that'd be interesting. Bro, what was Blood trying to do there? I don't know what Blood was wrong with. That turn. Did the trick off that? Why didn't I get the trick? I'm just gonna throw one of these back at a time. If that hits Diddy Kong, I'm very sorry. Okay, it didn't hit him. He did a lot of corruption exposing. Yeah, that sounds pretty typical too. One thing about like authoritarian governments and like nation states in general, the more authoritarian a government is, the more corrupt it is for sure. But then also the less stable of a political or civic society there is, the more corruption there will be. This is one of the problems that a lot of countries in the global south suffer from, and it's part of the IMF debt trap. I've kind of explored that a little bit before. How like the IMF will be like, yeah, you can have this money, but you have to use it for like combating corruption. But you can't not have corruption if your country is that like unstable and poor or something like that. You know. And of course, frequently there is also a trend that authoritarian leaders tend to not like the tend to not really want to create a stable civil society because that threatens them. when you have a stable civil society, it's much easier for democratic movements to grow stronger, and for union movements to grow stronger, and anti-authoritarianism to grow stronger. So there's this weird like loop where the dictators in some of these third world countries will benefit quite a lot from their relationship with the IMF, because the debt trap keeps their country unstable and keeps them in a position of power. And ironically enough, if the IMF were really interested in these countries developing and getting rid of their dictators, then the IMF would be offering them less stringent like conditions on the loans that they get, and also like not conditioning it always with the same like, oh, you have to invest in fighting corruption. Hopefully that makes sense, but yeah. Basically, corruption is cringe, the IMF is cringe, dictators are cringe. They all love to be cringe together. And, at some point you gotta break the cycle. Here, let's see. Pro-democracy movement in Russia. Let's see what the internet has to tell me about this. Democratic Russia movement. Formed in 1990. I want to see, like, the modern stuff. Dictators in the IMF should just get a room? Yeah, seriously, dude. I mean, I'm sure they have one at the UN or wherever they meet, So let's do diplomacy room. And by diplomacy, I mean, like, jerk each other off about how much we're developing the country, when really it's just money going into somebody's pocket. Yes, Radio Free Europe. Definitely the most reliable source. Here we go. Let's go to Vox. This is a specific instance that they're covering here. They probably do drugs too. Oh, for fucking sure, dude. Even in non-dictatorial countries, most politicians are doing drugs. Like, in the United States, you better believe that every fucking person in the White House is on drugs of some kind, basically all the time. And the older they are, the funnier the drugs, right? Like, the people who are up to their 50s or maybe even 60s, they're doing cocaine, right? Like the White House staffers, they're all doing coke. Meanwhile, Joe Biden and all the fucking senile weirdos in the Senate, they're probably doing uppers, like Ambien or some shit. Fucking Valium or whatever. Doing drugs is basically, it's an indulgence that politicians frequently engage in order to, I don't know, make their work sort of marginally more tolerable. Get me out of there, dude. Cocaine is the rich man's drug? You bet your ass it is. Thank you, Alfie. Alfie's a homie, dude. My man's using Diddy Kong and the Wild Wing and the Wii Wheel. If you see him in your custom track Wi-Fi room, give him the time of day. Try not to screw him over too hard. Certified comrade. I'm gonna use his golden here, because I think I have to, kind of. And I get third. Alright, Vox, tell me about the pro-democracy protests in Russia a few years ago. Pro-democracy protests rocking Moscow, explained. In July of 2019, mind you, this is 5 years ago now, Moscow election officials banned opposition candidates from running for city council. This weekend, protests swelled to 50,000 in Moscow. Tens of thousands of people protested in Moscow on Saturday, marking the fifth weekend people have rallied in the Russian city to demand fair elections. Demonstrations began in July after opposition candidates were barred from the ballot. Let's see. So it seems like tensions were on the verge of bursting for quite a while, and this was like the straw that broke the camel's back in 2019 here. So people came out to protest quite a bit. And that's significant for Russia because, you know, protesters will get carried away by the cops. Like, you get arrested just for protesting in Russia. You know, you can get arrested at a protest in the United States, too. Governments do not like when people protest. This is a ubiquitous fact among governments everywhere. But authoritarian governments are much more heavy-handed on protests than liberal, like, democratic governments are. You know, the differences in Russia, you would actually disappear for quite some time, whereas in the United States, you'd probably be released with no charges. Okay. So what I got from that article, it said somebody said that, like, oh, these protests are kind of fluid. There's not a consistent demand, but there is a consistent dissatisfaction with the anti-democratic tendencies in the Russian government and stuff, which is not a great sign, right? Like, one of the things that makes or breaks an effective political movement is their ability to make coherent demands. And what I'm hearing from that is it doesn't sound like the pro-democracy movement in Russia has that many coherent demands to make. They just all seem to be relatively dissatisfied about the same thing. Kind of reminiscent of the Occupy Wall Street movement in the United States. Did make Russia somewhat livable. That's why it's so popular. Yeah, that's right. That's one of the that's the main thing that has kept Putin in such a position of power for so long, is that he fixed somewhat some of the problems that was caused by the shock therapy and by Yeltsin's presidency. You know, or rather his governments did. And you know, he was like at the head of things. Because, you know, in Russia, the way things really work there is it's like a lot of other countries, the whoever's in power is there because they are relatively beneficial for the like owning class in Russia. And in Russia, the business owners, the oligarchs, as people in the West tend to call them, are like holdovers from the Soviet days. And, you know, Putin has kept the country relatively stable for them and kept their enterprises relatively stable. So he's got a lot of backing from the Russian owning class behind him. I can't see a Russian dictatorship post-Putin because no one else is so popular. And that's actually the main problem of Putin's presidency, is that eventually that man is going to die, and there's not really going to be any charismatic personality to replace him. Because one of the things about dictatorships is that they tend to be focused on the strongman themselves, and they don't usually concern themselves with setting up a successor. Because if the successor gets too popular, that generates political instability and could cause like unrest and spark a military coup and whatever to overthrow the current guy. That's the same for most post-Soviet states. About what you mean? The stuff about gas prices? In fact, actually, you know, what I described about authoritarian strongmen not setting up successors, even though they kind of need to in order to continue the movement, applies to the Republican Party in the United States as well. This is the reason that there's no successor to Trump, because any comparably charismatic figure would inevitably represent a challenge to Trump while he's still in a position of power. Stalin also had a successor, even though no one else was as popular. Oligarchs. Oh yeah, well, in Stalin's case, the you know, the USSR had more than just his personality holding it together. Communist officials came to power post-independence in post-Soviet states. Yeah, that's right. In a lot of the post-Soviet states, the like oligarchs and powerful politicians were just people who used to be members of the Soviet Communist Party when they were part of the USSR. And that is because the USSR wasn't communist, they were just a different kind of capitalist. And as a result, that power transferred really, really easily because they were, previously they were the people in charge of running the nominally state-owned enterprise, which really was run by people in the state and was not controlled by the workers working there. Once the Soviet Union fell, they just became the people now owning and running those enterprises as private enterprises, outside of the state framework. It's still capitalism. It's just two different kinds of capitalism. Yeah. But I really want to hammer in that point about, like the, haven't declassified the files of the Lithuanian SSR. Oh yeah, for sure. Every state has its dirty secrets. Because like fucking that probably happened in Lithuania too. But Lithuania is more democratic, as far as I know, than a lot of the other post-Soviet states, because they're part of the they've gotten some of that economic stability from the Western Bloc as a product of being, I think, a member of the EU and a member of NATO. Having those ties with Western countries. They got those investments and loans on much more favorable terms. In fact, if we go back to what I was talking about with the IMF debt cycle and having to break that cycle, Lithuania is an example of how that cycle gets broken. And like, the difference between Lithuania and a lot of other post-Soviet states is Lithuania had a much better relationship with Western countries after the Soviet Union collapsed than did, Russia, Kazakhstan, or wherever else. So the Russian economy languished in, well, sanction, shock therapy, and a whole host of other things that were ultimately the fault of, like, Western countries. While Lithuania was actually able to cultivate those diplomatic and economic relationships and got itself out of that debt trap. Civil society in Lithuania actually exists and is relatively stable. Whereas in a lot of authoritarian countries, there's constantly a question of whether circumstances will be right for a coup d'etat anytime in the next couple of years. We're starting to stop teaching Russian and replacing it with other languages slowly here. Cool, I guess. Yeah, I think that's good. Like, diversifying your sort of language pool there. Ultimately, I think that's a matter of social norms changing, and I don't think that's necessarily a good or bad thing to teach Russian or to not teach Russian. But you know what? Ultimately, I think if it helps ease the sort of situation with respect to like the seething hatred that people have for Russian everything, then I think that's good. The more languages, the merrier. So, that's pretty good too. There have been plans to ban Russian in school for a while. That I don't agree with. That I think is like a terrible idea. Banning a language never results in anything good. Even if it's the language of like a former oppressor or whatever, no. Don't do that. That's a bad idea. I'm not to say that you have actually any influence over the Lithuanian government. But if you can, if you can get me in contact with my handler over there at the Lithuanian CIA, I need to talk to them, explain how that's a bad policy decision. We don't have enough teachers, Lamau. Yeah, that's a genuine problem. What I have issue with is the ban hammer. Those things aren't really related. Not having enough teachers and then banning the instruction of Russian as a language are separate things. Like if I were a policymaker in France after World War II, the Germans did some bad stuff in France as well as in Poland, especially in a lot of the Eastern European states. You wouldn't want to ban the instruction of German as a language. That has nothing to do with the Nazis, We learn 2 languages in schools here. I do actually have some power. Oh shit! Maybe you convince them that banning a language is a bad idea. Yeah, in America, in most school systems, you have to learn 2 languages as well. I went with French, because I have a sort of language base with that at home. There's this member of Samos who was heavily simping for my grandma. Lol. That's actually incredibly funny. I love that. Oh no. My epic technique. Ah, see, I've kind of wanted to veer into the grass, but I've ultimately refrained. No, don't. Okay. I was hoping so bad that didn't hit the Carter guy. Really did not want to accidentally hit him. My man's Alfie is being a real Chad trying to make it with a cart in this world. Brutal, bike-dominated world, Go forward, and we're good. Cool. Thinking about Russia again. I think that here's a prediction I'm comfortable making, right? The political situation in Russia is going to remain relatively the same, at least until Putin dies. When Putin dies, there's a genuine question mark about some stuff that could happen, and I'm under no delusion that Russia's going to become a democracy once Putin is dead or anything. But certainly, I think the oligarchs are going to have a hard time finding somebody to replace Vladimir Putin who is as charismatic and as compelling as he was. Lukashenko inherits both states. True. Number 1 Lukashenko victory royale. 2030 something. I don't know. He default dances into the Kremlin and assumes his position at the desk to write laws and such. God damn it. Now I want somebody to put Lukashenko as like a 3D model into Gmod and just make him default dance. Lukashenko actually proposed a union state with Russia where he would be in power a while ago. That's such a fucking power move to be the like tiny ass neighbor state to Russia and be like, yes, I have proposed union state, you see. I will be president of both countries. You get the fucking Vladimir Putin stare. Vodka cures COVID? That's based. This is true. I drink vodka all the time. It is never not solving my problems, you see. Always and forever, vodka has solved my life problems. I'm kidding. For anybody out there who sees this, who's like reviewing it at Twitch or whatever, do not drink excessively. This is not an endorsement of drinking. Oh, jeez. Got a lot of air off that, but I didn't really want. Ah, I hit him. Nice. I know some pretty good, like, hidden banana and fake item box spots on this map. On this track, rather. Here's one. You put it right when people land from that. The Union State was under Yeltsin, by the way. Oh, okay, okay. So, man, Lukashenko's been in power for a long time. You get the Boris Yeltsin fucking drunk stare. Oh no. I fucking hit my own banana. I've been hoisted by my own petard. If I'm not mistaken, they actually... Russia and Belarus are in the Union State right now. Like, they have that. That's a thing. Banana's not as hidden as I thought. So the Union State does exist, and Lukashenko is in charge? That's wild. So Lukashenko is in charge of the Russian-Belarus Union State. That is funny as fuck. Flawless Lukashenko victory. He's in charge since 2000. Oh, let me open this in the browser, actually. Yeah, here we go. Union State of Russia and Belarus, supranational nation consisting of Belarus and Russia, of course. Deepening the relationship of the two states. Union State is based on a previous treaty between Russia and Belarus made in April of 1997. Other countries are allowed to join, but right now it's just Russia and Belarus. No fucking way. The supranational union is ruled through the Supreme State Council and other governing bodies. As of 2024, the current president of the Supreme State Council of the Union is Alexander Lukashenko, who has held the position since 2000. That is incredible. Genuinely incredible. Now, of course, does that mean Lukashenko has any actual power here? No. What's written on paper and the de facto situation of who holds the political power between, like, Russia and Belarus, these are different things. But it is the funniest shit that there is that disconnect. That, like, you know, Lukashenko is actually president of both countries on paper. But Putin really holds all the influence here. Him and the Russian oligarchs, sort of, that he, you know, confers with frequently. This is like being the president of the EU, no real power. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. The EU does have some power, though. Like, the EU, maybe not the presidency, but, like, the EU does have the ability to pass, like, continent-wide budgets and stuff. You know? Oh, well. Maybe the Union State can do that too, and I just didn't know about it. But either way, yeah, it's not like either one is especially powerful. Certainly the EU is not as powerful with respect to policy making as any given country in the EU is, like, in their own borders. Like, the EU has less influence in Austria than Austria does. Oh, what the fuck? That was a bad bounce. Oh, we got a full-ass room here. This is cool. Alright. Start going. And just like that. Yo, what up? We do a little bit of trolling. I think that bomb would have only hit him if he got the startup boost when he landed. That's actually a pretty good spot for me to get shocked, because then I would get put on these mushrooms, which send me at a constant speed for a while. It's kind of like I'm not small for as long. Ooh, that was really good. The Union State was actually Gorbachev's idea? That's kind of based, actually. Union states and internationalism is a based thing in concepts. You wanted autonomous republics in a union state, kind of like the EU. That's pretty cool, I guess. Instead of the USSR, I think that's definitely a better idea than the USSR, and pretty characteristic of him as a more liberal reformer. You know, social democrat, as opposed to state capitalist, but loves to call themselves communist. Coltonlow, hi, welcome back to chat, and I messed up the mushroom section. We are just talking about post-Soviet politics in Eastern Europe. What an exciting subject of discussion. He still crushed civilians under tanks? Yeah, he did. And that's, like, really fucking bad. But you see, Stalin would have crushed civilians under 1,000 tanks, whereas Gorbachev only summoned 500. So you see, this is an improvement. Obviously, I'm hyperbolizing to show that, like, you know, this is an improvement, but it's, you know, obviously doesn't entirely fix things. You would have killed their whole families. Yeah, that was the norm in the Soviet Union. Look, what I'm saying here is that Gorbachev was taking the Soviet Union in the correct direction. A lot of what you're describing is not something exclusive to Gorbachev's tenure, right? And I think that, like, what I'm talking about here is that, like, if the Soviet Union had taken a more reform approach, a la like what Gorbachev and other reformers, like more liberal types, wanted, rather than the shock doctrine, things would have turned out better. And that, again, speaks to how bad the shock doctrine was. Like, what, 150,000 civilians, 70% women and children deported? Yeah, that's really fucking shitty. Oh, well. Look, all this is kind of a moot point either way, because, like, Gorbachev died. You see, he's dead now. El Bozo, I guess. And instead of getting a marginally, like, better timeline for the post-Soviet Russia and post-Soviet Eastern Bloc, we got the worst possible timeline, where Boris Yeltsin became the president, and like, the shock therapy was like ran rampant with no real brakes on the train, so to speak. You know? Pretty sure he got charged with war crimes in Lithuania a while ago. That wouldn't surprise me. Like I said, the Soviet Union was never all that good to the other countries in the Union aside from Russia. You know, need I mention the Holodomor in Ukraine, where I believe it was actually 6-ish million Ukrainians were starved to death. All right, next race. Oh, 1v3's here. Perfect. Oh, dang. I don't have that much time left. But I did watch the I did watch that talk show off stream. Yeah. Anyways, I hate how people talk about the end of the Cold War as a Western victory. The West did everything they could to save the USSR. No, they fucking didn't. The West did everything they could to drive the USSR into the ground and to humiliate it after the fact. And by the way, the Cold War was an unambiguous Western victory. The Cold War was fundamentally an economic conflict between the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc, right? The military buildup, as much as it was a show of force and military might, was a testament to economic strength. The United States, every military advancement that the U.S. made, every time it like built up more troops, built more nukes, produced more tanks and stuff, the U.S. could sustain that level of production at least for a very much longer time than the Soviet Union could. The Soviet Union literally ran itself out of money and collapsed. Every single time we protested, they said stupid Lithuanians are trying to stop the reforms. I don't see how that refutes my point that I'm making here. Like the end of the Cold War was unambiguously the Soviet Union collapsed, and you know the Eastern Bloc more or less along with it. You know, no more Warsaw Pact, and the Western Bloc was still intact. You know, still had all of the constituent parts, the European Community, NATO. And all that. All the economic institutions of the West were still standing, and the Soviet Union was in shambles, at least until the dust settled after the shock therapy, and now we have Putin in charge in Russia and stuff. Every single time we post... I don't... Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about, and I don't doubt that that happened, but, like... That doesn't refute what I'm saying, that the Cold War unambiguously was a Western victory and the USSR lost the economic fight there. He completely supported Gorbachev until the footage of his oppression was leaking out. Civilians at home started freaking out. Yeah, because Gorbachev was more of a liberal economic reformer, and the West liked that. The West didn't like the USSR's previous like model of state capitalism, and they were willing to take what they could get. And then they realized that associating with Gorbachev would be optically detrimental to them once it was leaked all the horrible shit that he was doing. That, you know, again, shock. The leader of an authoritarian country was doing authoritarian things. And then decide to sever ties with him, not because they just learned about it, but because now the whole world knew about it too. I guarantee you every Western country that had ties with Gorbachev and the USSR in the 80s knew about those atrocities. I've seen the propaganda of American media outlets drawing Gorbachev forward as the Baltics were dragging him back. I didn't say anything about the Baltics. And by the way, I'm no friend to American media. I've talked about this many times on my live stream. You should know what I think of American media by now. And like my argument was not that the Baltics are backwards barbarians. My argument was the Cold War was an economic battle between the United States and the USSR as economic blocs, and the USSR lost. And in fact, because the USSR lost, because it collapsed, I would argue Lithuania actually came out better on the other side. Like, continued occupation by the USSR would have been likely a lot worse than Lithuania joining the EU and NATO, because, like I mentioned earlier, it would have been able to, and was able to, secure loans and financial investment on a lot better terms, and it was able to, like, build a more stable and functioning civil society. And this isn't me saying that the West is good either, because, like, obviously I have my critiques of capitalism. I'm a socialist. The West didn't support our independence. So fucking what? The West didn't support plenty of people's independence. The West supported Al-Qaeda in the 90s. Like, yeah, the West did bad shit. Crazy. I'm just now hearing about this. But I got mad. Many such cases. I don't like people saying fall of the USSR was caused by Western intervention. That's not what I said. I said that the Cold War was an economic like battle standoff between the US and the USSR, and the USSR lost. I didn't say that the West economically sabotaged the USSR and blah blah blah. No, that's not what happened. What happened was this was a competition between two relatively regionalized economic blocks. I didn't say that's what you said. Then why did you mention it? I'm sorry. I'm confused. I'm flustered and I'm confused right now. Damn. I'm gonna get a reprimand from my handler in the Lithuanian CIA after this. I should probably look up what the actual intelligence agency is in Lithuania so I don't just keep saying the Lithuanian CIA. I don't like the narrative of a lot of tankies. Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, then yeah, relevant to bring it up because tankies are inevitably a big part of that discussion. Saying the West caused the collapse of the USSR and removing all agency from the people. Well, yeah, of course, you know, people have a limited degree of agency even in authoritarian governments, but I do like the like I think that the trouble arises in the minutia of these arguments. Did the West cause the collapse of the USSR? Kind of in some measure, because there was like this competition and the USSR was losing, and they made the choice to keep competing in that competition. But as to what I think you're saying that tankies often say, which is that like, oh, the USSR would have won if it weren't for the West doing like economic subterfuge, that argument's just not true at all. You know. RS is the SWAT, they'll knock down your door too, Lamau. True. Okay. But yeah, tankies are pretty unhinged when it comes to the USSR. And you know, I like a lot of times the reason I don't talk that much about agency is because like a lot of times agency deals with like a person atomized down to the level of that one person. And that's something that I don't usually believe exists all that much, especially in a nation state as large as the USSR or the United States. Like, I personally don't have very much agency in American politics. I might have agency in local politics, but not in American politics, you know? But yeah, okay. I don't think I disagree with anything you're saying. For decades before fall, there was resistance. There was not a year in history of occupation where it was not public resistance against the USSR. Yeah, I don't doubt that at all. Like I said, the USSR was incredibly like shitty to the countries that were member states of the economic union or you know whatever union, and you know that tends to happen even in a really authoritarian country. Is that you know people tend to resist and protest and stuff. We see the same thing in China, in India, to you know India having a lesser extent of this problem as far as I know. Countries like that. Yeah. It's just, you know, with authoritarian governments though, like there is one thing about authoritarianism that it's tends to be pretty stable because it's like not really tied to popular opinion or popular sentiment in any way. Like there is still that sort of line that they have to cross, but that line is a lot lower than in liberal democracies and stuff. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me there would have been that there was a lot of public protest. Teachers used to check children's teeth for poppy seeds to make sure that they were not celebrating Christmas. Really, poppy seeds? Is that an Eastern European thing? Because I've never seen that in America. People celebrate Christmas a whole lot in America. In Lithuania, we celebrate on Christmas Eve, not day. Oh, really? That's interesting. I mean, we celebrate Christmas Eve here, but in America, it's like Christmas Eve is the day before Christmas, it being that like the 25th. Also in America, the lines of religious celebration and commercial celebration are getting more and more blurred. So a lot of places and some like normies are really fucking insufferable about like celebrating Christmas or getting ready and decorating for Christmas like a month or 2 months in advance. It's fucking, I hate it. Christmas keeps getting pushed earlier and earlier every year. Most traditional dishes have poppy in them because it has to be pescatarian. No meat or milk and shit. Oh, okay, interesting. Huh. I learn something new every day. Alright, dry bones. Sorry, had to do it to him. Yeah, there we go. This will be the last race, by the way. Kusukai are so delicious. I don't know what that is, but I'm glad you enjoy it. Ah, shock. Oh, and the blue shell. Interesting concept. Oh no, banana. He might have a red shell back there, so I don't want to throw this away. Alright, seems like I managed to outrace him at the end. Very cool. I think being a trans gay tanky who loves Stalin is like being a Jewish neo-Nazi who supports Hitler. Ah, I see. Yeah, there is thanks a lot for the pump. Oh no, was that you in second? I'm so sorry, dude. Also, thanks for the follow, Xylan MK. Glad to have you here. Unfortunately, that was the end of the... Oh yeah, that was. Okay. Yeah, good shit, good shit. Anyways, that's 2 hours for me, so I'm probably done streaming. If you like Mario Kart, if you like politics, make sure to come back sometime. Obviously no pressure, but I like having other people here. It's fun. As you heard, we had quite the boisterous conversation about post-Soviet politics in Eastern Europe. Anyways, thank you, Flat Earth Dennis. I will have a good evening. Let me see if anybody else is live that you guys might enjoy. Dude, Plup is live. I hope you guys like Super Smash Bros. Because Plup is, I guess, watching Genesis 10 tournament happening right now. Raid Plup. Right? That's just. Yeah. I'll be back on Monday, probably. Yeah. Probably on Monday. See you guys then.